Hello, everybody. I'm here joined with Josh, one of the winners of the first ever Semantic Kernel Plugins Hackathon. He built one that won the fun and creative category for our prizes, and he built a actual Pokemon adventure text-based game using plugins and Semantic Kernel. So without further ado, Josh, do you want to introduce yourself first off?
Yeah, hi, I'm Josh. I'm from the UK. I'm a software engineer by trade, but I used to be a computer science teacher. Quite enjoy hackathons. I've been playing around a lot with the semantic kernel, and I thought, why not try and make something a little bit different? So, Pokemon.
Yeah, can you give a quick walkthrough of what it is that you actually built?
So the basic plan with this was that it would be a choose your own adventure. So there's three main actions that a user can do once they've started. Within ChatGPT, you should be able to start off an adventure. You can get all sorts of information about different Pokemon using the Pokémon API. So for example, if ChatGPT decides that it wants you to encounter, let's say, a Charmander, it'll go off, it'll make an API call to the Pokemon API and get back a whole load of information about what moves it's got, where you might find it, that sort of thing. And then it uses it to fill in the details for the prompts. So for example, you could be exploring. So ChatGPT might give the plugin a prompt of something like heading to a Pokemon Center. Please forgive the British spelling. The model will think about it for a moment and then come back with a semi-detailed story. Obviously, the idea being that ChatGPT saves your state. So as you go through, different things happen, but it gives you different options. So as a user, you can choose, are you going to explore? Are you going to do a battle? Or are you going to try and catch something? So every stage, you can just keep going and make your own decisions. Let's say that we're going to have a battle against Pikachu. It has a prompt set up in it, so it can go off, get the relevant data from the Pokemon API, and start to provide you with more narrative about what that battle might look like. You may even decide partway through a battle that you'd like to try and catch the Pokemon. Let's go with Mewtwo, for example. And it will give you the relevant story for that as well. So obviously these are just in Swagger, so there's not actually any context for it, so it's doing it all from scratch each time. But within ChatGPT, you should be able to just make your decisions at each stage of the journey, just like those old style text-based adventure stories. And yeah, it populates itself using data from the Pokemon API.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Josh, for walking through that. Could you share your thoughts about what do you think about this plugin architecture, if you will, and how it interfaces with large language models and even just building AI-powered apps going forward?
As a developer, the whole semantic kernel system is wonderful. I sort of see it as there being two different streams of AI development. There are the people who do proper full-on AI work where they're making the AIs. And then there's people like me who are just sort of application and web developers who we want to use some of that power and just plug it in. And having these plugins is a fantastic way to do that. It gives me the ability to write native C# functions or even Python now, which is great news, and also write those semantic functions, what we probably call prompts, and plug that data straight into an actual application, which is really, really useful, especially in sort of chat-based applications. It's very, very powerful. I think it's a really, really useful tool for developers like me.
Are there any gotchas or concerns or even things that developers should be thinking about as they are looking to build plugins going forward?
I think the biggest two things for me are avoiding hallucinations and making sure that your prompt engineering is as perfect as possible. Not only so that you can stop people doing prompt injection attacks, but also so that you can make sure that it does exactly what you want. I'm running a hackathon for some of my colleagues next week using the semantic kernel. And part of my presentation to kick that off has two examples of a web app that I built to throw emoji at other members of the team using WebSockets. All of the code was written using ChatGPT. There's one example where I gave it a really terrible prompt, and it's literally just raining water drop emojis on a name. It's terrible. The well-written prompt, you can actually throw multiple emojis. It prompted me to come up with a emoji selector drop-down tool. So there's a massive difference in the quality that you get based on what you put into these models. I guess for me, that's the biggest thing. Make sure that those prompts are right. Make sure you're engineering things well, and make sure you're protecting yourself from injection attacks.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of these are honestly probably like emerging patterns, but also emerging problems that have risen from, working with these probabilistic, non-deterministic type models and incorporating them into your applications where, yeah, I think most people are used to having the if this, then this sort of mindset of developing an app. So it's a different way of doing things, and
Very much
it
so.
likely will be the way of the future. Are there any other pieces of advice? You shared that you've taught computer science before. So as a teacher, even, how do you imagine the future of software development, computer science, being influenced by this whole thing?
I mean, I think we're starting to see the first baby steps towards it now. From personal experience, I'd say my Stack Overflow usage is probably down 80 or 90% in the last 6 months, because with tools like ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot, I just don't need it anymore. But I am looking at this as an experienced senior developer. For juniors coming in, there is a very real danger of getting used to having these tools and not learning how to debug applications themselves. The tools themselves one day perhaps will be fantastic and perfect and able to be given a code base and perfectly find every bug and generate you an entire code base. But I see the role of the developer changing more from being sort of a general code monkey where you're churning out a lot of boilerplate code and then doing the cool bits in between, to being more of a top-down manager where you're managing these AIs as if they were a junior colleague and sort of giving them tasks to do, and then you're checking what they've done and making sure that it's exactly right. I think developers are probably not going to go anywhere, at least not in the next 10 to 20 years. I think we still have a very important role to fulfill. But certainly in the longer term, I could see us being replaced by AI, but not for sort of 50 years or so.
Well, I think big part of that is staying up to date with the latest technologies, participating in events like this Semantic Kernel Plugins Hackathon, or even the hackathon that you're throwing together. So yeah, again, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time out to participate, to be involved in the Semantic Kernel community, and excited to see what cool things that you build in the future.
Thank you for having me.